you had scored a perfect 10 throughout.
Yes.
And that's a thing of legends.
Being a 10-pointer always has a certain degree of accomplishment associated with it. But at least in my case, there has always been a lot of humility because I know there were smarter people than me in that batch.
Right.
So अगर आप actually 94 batch में जाओगे
जी.
और आप बोलोगे दस्सी कौन था,
जी.
you will not hear my name.
Right.
There's another person who is Dassi of our batch.
All throughout?
Right. No, he's not
Overall.
a 10-pointer, but he's called Dassi.
Right.
The nickname belongs to him.
Right.
And to that extent, this notion that this is something that sets you apart never has, occurred. When you look back when you're 50 years old, which I am now, you will feel a sense of accomplishment. You will feel a sense of relationships around you that will be fulfilling. I almost think that the instinct to give back exists in all of us, right? Human beings actually derive more happiness from giving than from taking. Even if I meet someone after 30 years for the first time,
yeah.
The ice breaks within the first 30 seconds, literally. Venture capital was happening for the first time in India in 2006 timeframe. Right? There were some state-run venture capital firms earlier, a couple of private firms that had come in 99 but had very quickly transitioned to being growth investors. And hence this whole notion that we are building the capital infrastructure on which startups can thrive in the future.
Yeah.
I think that was very compelling. I do want to reach out to my fellow alumni again and urge them to get involved more with IIT as much as they can and make sure that this is an institution that continues to grow, thrive and stay relevant.
Good evening, Mr. Alok. Welcome to the Dil Se IIT Delhi podcast.
Good evening, and thanks so much for having me here.
Thanks for having us here in your office. How did IIT happen?
I'm just trying to recall. I think it was my brother who first pointed out there was something called IIT when I must have been in 10th grade or something. तो उसने अपने दोस्तों से सुना होगा. It was not in our conscious realm कि ये सब होता है. And then the prep work started. Thankfully, at that time, preparations were not as intense as they seem to be now. But yeah, I think while I had visited the IIT campus before, lekin truly, I think understanding what is IIT, all of that happened late for me. But I must say it's been one of the most defining aspects of my life so far.
So did being a Delhi boy, so I would assume that you were in Delhi itself, and that's why you visited the campus. So was the change more evident as to what IIT is before you had entered or after you had entered?
I think the understanding of what IIT meant for a career, that existed before, right? Because there is enough halo around IIT and IITians कि यहाँ गए तो फिर life बन जाएगी.
जी.
But truly the impact that college can have on one's life is something that I only experienced at IIT. I think the realization of what impact it had perhaps even happened after IIT. Right, because उस समय तो flow में चल रहा है.
जी.
तो वो चल रहा था, दोस्त बन रहे थे.
बिल्कुल.
GP आ रही थी.
जी.
नौकरी लग रही थी.
जी.
But I think the true impact of that when I look back now after 30 years and the fact that many of those friendships have only gone stronger with time.
Yeah.
The fact that the true impact of what IIT has done for our careers, right? It has provided us with perhaps one of the best, calling cards for the rest of our careers.
Absolutely.
I think some of those elements of impact have only become visible, I would say, after decades of being at IIT.
You had scored a perfect 10 throughout.
Yes.
And that's a thing of legends for sure. क्या उसके बारे में आप कुछ बताना चाहेंगे? How did it come about? What were the pressures like, or did you not take any?
नहीं प्रेशर IIT में जाते हो तो परफॉर्म करने के लिए जाते हो. And I would say that about all of my colleagues. I think one of the things that we were very fortunate to have, both when I was preparing for IIT, but certainly at IIT, is people that I studied with, most of them were not motivated by competing.
Yeah.
Right? Most of us were motivated because learning was fun.
Right.
Right? And hence, we were helping each other out. Many people helped me out in that journey. Being a 10-pointer always has a certain degree of accomplishment associated with it. But at least in my case, there has always been a lot of humility because I know there were smarter people than me in that batch.
Right.
So अगर आप actually 94 batch में जाओगे और आप बोलोगे दस्सी कौन था, you will not hear my name.
Right.
There's another person who's Dassi of our batch.
All throughout?
Right? No, he's not a 10-pointer, but he's called Dassi.
Right.
The nickname belongs to him.
Right.
And to that extent, this notion that this is something that sets you apart never has, occurred.
Right.
There are people who I think, deserve to be there more than I did. And even today, if you ask me the smartest people in the batch, I might be in the top 10, but certainly I won't rate myself as the top one.
Do you have you seen that pattern occur throughout then your career, like that need to actually just learn and then actually go on achieving at different ends?
Yeah, I think the appetite or the fun in solving problems is something that I think happened at IIT.
Yeah. Right?
And more than anything else, that has defined my motivations in pursuing what I have pursued after, right? So, startups kariye. Why do I do startups? When I dig within myself, I think the most salient piece that comes out to me is problem hai, it'll be fun to solve some of those problems, right? There's a sense of accomplishment in solving problems, not necessarily what that implies in financial terms or recognition terms. So I think that appetite for problem solving is IIT's gift to me, and that has in some sense driven me till date. Right. In whatever I'm doing. So yeah, that thread has carried forward, but not necessarily in a externally visible, 10-point notion.
Right.
As much as this intrinsic pleasure in attacking problems and figuring out solutions.
But you do talk about that appetite, but something from back then, any meals that made you go forth and do what you did? Any
yes.
go-to?
So actually, my desire to be an entrepreneur got triggered at IIT.
Okay.
This was my third year internship where I interned with one of our ex-IIT alums in Greater Kailash.
Yeah.
And I come from, my father was in government service, so I don't have an entrepreneurial family background. So, and I went to work with this person, Mr. Mahesh Chandra. I hope he sees this. It will be, my tribute to him. And I saw him running a high-quality business, having all the flexibility that he needed. Actually being hired to being able to hire people like us and offer us that opportunity.
Yeah.
And that is when this notion triggered in my mind that this is what I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So certainly that was one thing that stoked the entrepreneurial ambition in me. And after IIT, I obviously went for my master's abroad.
Yes.
But I was very clear that I wanted to come back and do a startup here.
Right.
Finally realized that in 1999 with another one of our IIT alums. He was my co-founder there. But certainly that is one kind of defining moment in my journey at IIT.
So throughout your career, the transition between entrepreneurship and then actually working for someone else, and a decade of non-entrepreneurial aspect. So how do you see that change?
Yeah, when I switched from my first startup to Canon, which was my venture capital role, it felt very entrepreneurial. So I don't think I have seen that as being a non-entrepreneurial role.
Right.
In the sense that Canon wanted to start their India business, they picked me to build and run that.
Yeah.
And investment roles in general tend to be very entrepreneurial. You're backing startups, you're working with entrepreneurs, you're taking risks, you're highly accountable to the performance that you generate. So that was very entrepreneurial in itself. But it was also kind of at the heart of it, venture capital was happening for the first time in India in 2006 time frame. Right. There were some state-run venture capital firms earlier. a couple of private firms that had come in '99, but had very quickly transitioned to being growth investors. And hence this whole notion that we are building the capital infrastructure on which startups can thrive in the future.
Yeah.
I think that was very compelling. It requires its own set of problem solving. There was a lot of camaraderie in many of us who started in the industry at the same point in time.
Yeah.
So it almost felt like a movement at that point. I must say that at least I did not carry the vision of where venture capital would land up in 15 years' time.
Right.
So we were pretty much kind of taking one step at a time and then discovering what the next step could be.
Right. How would you sort of wrap your mind around IIT being that nurturer to those founders and entrepreneurs? How do you define that culture?
Yeah, I think there are, at a fundamental level, 3 or 4 things that IIT does a good job of, right? One, clearly, and I am kind of thinking of this as problem-solving skills, but IITs tend to infuse that skill set of looking at any problem, being able to deconstruct that, and having the confidence to approach those problems. Right? In some sense, I think that is central to entrepreneurship. Right? You have to be able to take a problem, appreciate the problem. Most problems are complex in nature.
Right.
But then you have to have the confidence to go, I'm going to, try and attempt something that clearly is unsolved.
Sure.
And then the skill set to say, okay, this is how I want to deconstruct the problem, right? Pick up signals from the ground, but synthesize those into some coherent vision.
Right.
So in its own way, I think IIT is good at training you on those aspects of problem solving, but also that inherent confidence and belief that you can give me any problem and I will crack it.
Right.
Right? Whether that is well-founded or arrogant, I'm not making a commentary on that, but it gives you that confidence.
Right.
I think the second thing, in its own strange way, personal life, hostel life at IIT, and especially since I have experience at IIT Delhi, does promote a degree of collaboration and teamwork. It does make you realize that you're not the only game in town.
Right.
At least in my case, has helped me, build relationships with people, work collaboratively, appreciate what's great in other people. I think a lot of that humility comes out of being in that very high talent density.
Right.
At IIT. So I think those are some aspects that link. On the other hand, I must say that the networks that IIT creates, not just in your own batch, not just with people you've met, it literally spans 20 years before and 20 years after, where you can, pick up the phone and cold call someone and tell them that you are, X batch, and they will entertain you.
Right.
Right. So in the world of entrepreneurship, that is invaluable.
Absolutely.
Right. Just your ability to access pretty much whoever you need to access whenever you need to access.
Yeah.
There are many entrepreneurs who are probably better entrepreneurs than a lot of us, but they would give an arm and a leg for that network.
Absolutely.
So I think there are those elements that tie in well to the entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. At the same time, while you were 18 to 22, that age bracket, while in college, would you have done something different now that you say that your mindset is still developing from that source? Yeah.
I think if I went through that experience again, I would go broader.
Right.
Both academically, I think I was fairly focused in my stream of computer science. I think I traded off an appreciation for many other subjects, which I then, later in life I picked up. Economics is now one of my favorite subjects.
Right.
I'm actually enjoying biology quite a bit.
Wow.
So I think breadth in studies, but also breadth in relationships. Most of my friendships got seeded at IIT. But as I mentioned earlier, I didn't realize at IIT what they meant.
Right.
So a lot of that realization and investment actually happened 5 years, 10 years after I graduated from IIT.
Yeah.
And those are some of the best relationships I've ever built.
So were those relationships more because you were sharing the same campus, same hostel, same stream? What did they look like that time?
Yeah, I think at least for me, most of those very close relationships have been the same hostel.
Yeah.
They cut across departments.
Right.
And I think the core source of that was that we were all growing up together. Right? We were discovering ourselves, we were making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Many of our formative experiences that we call back are the same. Much of our value system is the same, right? We are used to that talent density, we are used to pushing ourselves to excel.
Yeah.
We are ambitious. We know there are smarter people out there than us. And so, while we are very confident, there is a degree of humility in all of us. So I think it's that shared set of experiences, especially when we were growing up, that has led to those friendships.
So that would be something on the individual level, but at the same time, was there a collective sense of some traditions that were going on in the hostel that time?
Yeah. So absolutely, right. And you can literally go through tons of those. Many of those tend to be hostel specific. Some cut across hostels, right? Water fights.
Right.
Within hostel, I went to Kumaon. We had this play field at the back of the hostel, frisbee, soccer, right? There was a courtyard where there would be tennis ball cricket in the courtyard.
Right.
So several of those which are, hostel specific, many of them cut across hostels. But yeah, I think some of those rituals, traditions are what build that degree of camaraderie.
Right.
Now, even if I meet someone after 30 years for the first time,
yeah.
The ice breaks within the first 30 seconds, literally.
Right.
Because there is that shared set of experiences, there is trust.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't take long to, shatter the distances of time.
So as you mentioned, your journey up till now of entrepreneurship, one way or the other, what sort of advice do you have for people who are there right now, who are studying, as to what is the right way to go about it?
Yeah, I've just seen very different paths to entrepreneurship that people have followed, right? So I came into entrepreneurship fairly early in my career. But I've seen people who are attempting entrepreneurship after 25 years of professional life, and that's fine, right? I went into entrepreneurship in a relatively tech-oriented space. But there are several of our peer alumni who have done startups in completely unrelated spaces. There have been social sector startups, there have been venture-backed startups, right? So I think I would advise students at IIT to keep an open mind, right? To explore what is it that they really like, what is the environment in which they enjoy, what gives them fulfillment. There are many paths to entrepreneurship. And honestly, there are many styles of entrepreneurship. So, some of those occupy the media limelight, right? But rather than get swayed by that, I think just following your gut and doing what you enjoy doing and believing in serendipity, right? Life will find a way.
Right.
I think those are important elements.
What a general advice for the students out there who are looking up to you, not just entrepreneurship, but how to make the most of their time at campus? Yeah.
See, people who are at IIT Delhi right now, are honestly my kids' age. If there's one thing that I want to tell them, they'll say, it would be to relax. You'll be fine, right? You've done enough, to earn your stripes. Not that you will stop trying for more. But honestly, I see a lot of students under tremendous pressure of what is going to happen in the future. And I just want to reassure you that you'll do okay, you'll do well. When you look back when you're 50 years old, which I am now, you will feel a sense of accomplishment you will feel a sense of relationships around you that will be fulfilling. So I just want students to not be under external pressure to do things that the world expects of them, to behave in a manner that is inconsistent with their own beliefs. I think those are important things once you look back from where I am now.
So aspect of looking back, how does one get in the mind frame of actually giving back also? So I would like to mention that you have endowed a certain sum of money, and you are a founder of the endowment fund as well, along with your wife, which is also incidentally from the campus.
Yes.
Do you have a story to go along?
See, I almost think that the instinct to give back exists in all of us, right? Human beings actually derive more happiness from giving than from taking. And to that extent, here the giving context also is, to an institution that we tremendously owe, wherever we are, right? We may regard ourselves as successes, we may regard ourselves as, still work in progress. But wherever we are, there's a strong role that the institute has played in this. So I do think that this is a privilege to give back and have the ability to give back. It is not a favor that we are doing on other people, right? Purely financially, did we all pay for the education that we received? The answer is no, right? So I see, giving back to IIT almost as a privilege, which allows me then to, get involved and share what I've learned over a period of time. And that is the request I would have to fellow alumni, that this is an opportunity to give back and be involved with an institution that has given us so much. And to whatever, our capacity to give back might be in financial terms, we must certainly leverage that to then give back our experience, our learnings, and make sure that next generation of IITians that come out are even better products than last.
Such a humbling, eloquently put thought, sir. But what also are your thoughts about what the institute can do to still nurture that aspect of nurturing amazing leaders, amazing entrepreneurs, who actually take that vision forward?
Yeah. See, my view is that an institute is an ecosystem, right? It provides the right environment. And I have been in touch with fresh graduates from IIT Delhi literally since I graduated. So every year, every second year, I see, the new wave of graduates come out. And I've always felt proud of that. So I think the institute is doing its job of providing the right environment, igniting young minds, keeping that curiosity and creativity vibrant, making sure that the skill sets that those students have are contemporary to the needs of the industry. The social system at IIT, which is another aspect of the ecosystem, is doing its job. Right? They are forming relationships that are as good as what we had an opportunity to form. They are giving and taking from other ecosystems. They are making all of us proud on a daily basis. I do think that the opportunities to engage more closely with the alumni exists, both at an institute level to make sure that the curriculum that we have, the technologies that we train our students around, remain in sync with what the industry needs, where research is headed, but also with students, to make sure that students can lean upon alumni more strongly,
right,
to pursue what they want to pursue. Whether that is entrepreneurship, whether that is consulting, whether that's music, it doesn't matter. But there is a certain degree of reassurance that a 20-year-old mind needs. And I think alumni can play a very significant role in providing that.
Right. What sort of vision do you feel that IIT should aim for? And where do you see it going? What would be the ideal direction?
Yeah, I think, IIT is recognized as one of the top institutions in the country, whether it is the quality of education or the training that it provides on an overall basis to its students. I do think that we should aspire for IITs to be globally recognized as top institutions of excellence, both in its academic research, but also its entrepreneurial contributions. I do think there is some great work happening at IITs to enable that. But really, I think that's the joint mission that we should undertake, where globally the word IIT anywhere should spark that feeling of excellence and credibility. I think this has been a great conversation. In fact, allows me to go back and relive some of the memories, at IIT. But yeah, I do want to reach out to my fellow alumni again, and urge them to get involved more with IIT, as much as they can, and make sure that this is an institution that continues to grow, thrive, and stay relevant, right, to the industry, but also to produce great human beings that we can continue to look back and be proud of what's coming next.
Thank you, Mr. Alok. It has been an amazing time.